have to revert back.
Hey, we got somebody for Perkins.
Yeah, right.
Wow.
New batteries or anything? Or?
It's working. It's just
F5.
okay. Well, we'll follow.
I didn't curb it. It was like,
It's 6 o'clock. The whole meeting will come to order. Let it be noted, all members are present with the exception of Alderman Tenorio, who is excused. First order of business is approval of the minutes of May 18th, 2021.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded for approval. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Item D2, discussion regarding the American Rescue Plan Act and allocated funds. Ms. Brill.
I'm here with Jason Kazmarek, our finance director, and we just wanted to give you an overview on the American Rescue Plan Act. I'm sure you've heard portions of it in the news and the like, and talk about some of the options that the city has for the funding that's been allocated to the cities. So I'll just go ahead with we put together a presentation. Just wanted to start with our vision and mission statement to remind what the goals are of the city. And then the American Rescue Plan Act, the president signed it into law on March 11th, $1.9 trillion. It's to combat COVID-19 pandemic and public health and economic impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic. Of the $1.9 million, this is the funding amounts that were given to the different levels of government. So aside from what the federal government is using, there's $350 million given to these various levels, including the states, counties, cities. This is the first time ever that cities have been given direct funds from the federal government. Usually it flows through the states. So the word that we hear on all of our webinars and trainings is unprecedented. So this is unprecedented, once in a lifetime type of thing. So it's kind of a big deal. So aside from what was allocated to those levels of government, they're also the federal government is also using hundreds of billions of dollars for these various items: public health, vulnerable population, education, housing, and then economic recovery for families and individuals. And the next few slides have examples of what the federal government and states and other levels of government are providing for individuals, so you can understand the various other programs that people could benefit from, businesses and families and the like. So there's the federal government has a variety, and states have a variety of funding available under these are a few of the different funds. So we have the Restaurant Revitalization Fund, Economic Injury Disaster Loan, Small Business Credit Initiative, Paycheck Protection Program, Shuttered Venues Operator Grant, and then Debt Relief. So these are things that are provided directly from the federal government to various businesses. And then for families and individuals, there's rent assistance, homeowner assistance for mortgages and the like, and then emergency housing for homeless and at-risk individuals. That's through the Section 8 housing, which we have here. Then there's a variety of other allocations. There's energy assistance. You're familiar with the stimulus checks that people have received. The unemployment benefits that have continued and will continue till September 6th. That's on top of the state benefits. And then there's just a number of other items on the bottom that the federal government portion of the act will go to. Any questions on that so far?
So to kind of just put that in a more of a dollar perspective, the overall ARPA was 1.9 trillion. The majority of it is going to these other allocations that are not going directly to states and local governments.
So there's a lot of money helping in all of these different projects. Our local award for the city of West Allis is $31 million. We did receive our $15.5 million in May. Milwaukee County is also getting $184 million, and we received it direct from the Treasury. There's some smaller municipalities that are not CDBG eligible that the money is flowing through the states. So the state has 60 days to pass that through to them. And then we do have till December 31st, 2024 to spend this. There's been some framework aside from the actual act. There's the U.S. Treasury put together interim rule, letting people know what they're thinking as far as guidance for the funding. It's, I believe, 151 pages, and it's still interim rule, so it won't be final probably until July. So we're operating under some interim rules, which a lot of municipalities and counties aren't allocating any funds because they want to see what the final rules are. You don't want to be allocating something and then have to change it. Go ahead.
And normally they wouldn't do this, but they wanted to, for municipalities that really had a need that they want to jump on right away, the rules would help them hopefully spend it on something that's going to be in the final rule. But this is unprecedented.
We'll see how many times we can say that. So this is a summary of the acceptable uses. So the public health responses for COVID-19, what we originally had mostly under the CARES Act. Then there's the economic impacts, the workers and households, small businesses, impacted industries, revenue losses, and then premium pay for frontline essential workers, as well as investments in water, sewer, storm, and broadband infrastructure. I believe, Jason, you were on a call with for a number of people.
Yes, I was. I've gone through quite a few, webinars just discussing the ARPA funds. When is it coming in? What can we use it on? And then there's still rulings coming out. But one of those was with the League of Wisconsin Municipalities, and they just did an informal poll of those attending. And the question was, there's a lot of questions coming in regarding water, sewer, storm infrastructure. How many of you are planning on spending on that? And 50% of the respondents said that there was a 75% chance or greater, so highly likely that they're going to be spending it on infrastructure.
This is a list of the ineligible uses, so the infrastructure other than the water, sewer, storm, and broadband. Debt payments, issuance costs, legal settlements or judgments, deposits to the pension funds. There's a lot of municipalities that are behind on their contributions, and the federal government doesn't want this to be a way to pay those funds. Can't save it for a rainy day, and then you can't pay more than $13 an hour for the premium pay for essential workers,
Is that $13 an hour over and above what they're
Yes.
paid right now?
with a maximum amount. And it's really focused on people, the lower income people. There is a guideline that you're not supposed to spend more than 150% of what the average earning is in your state per hour, or that's the guideline. But you can write, if you write a summary as to why you should be able to pay people above and beyond. I think I looked at it, it's about, I think, $71,000. So people above that, they're really not looking at you to give them any premium pay.
Makes sense.
And then if you fail to comply with the law, you're going to have to repay the money. In a lot of the webinars they've had, they have also said if you spend the first amount incorrectly, you won't get the second. So that's, I don't know if that's why they're doing it in two sums or.
And the first amount was 50% of the total.
Correct,
essentially.
correct. So we want to make sure that, I think everyone's a little nervous about what is really eligible. That's why there's a lot of municipalities that are hesitant to go forward. They're waiting for other people to jump in first, because you don't want to have to be paying back millions of dollars in 7 years when they finally come back and audit what you
That's the
spent
look
on it.
back period?
I'm just making that
Okay,
up.
I
I
didn't
just
know
figure
what-
it would take them that long to could be longer. They haven't talked about that at all. I'm sure it'll have to come at some
Well,
point.
ideally, they come up with the rules quickly and concisely. And
Right.
Rebecca, how that works with the money being allocated, say so many millions already to Dallas, you know? I mean, there is but being deposited in a bank, you know, any institution. So how they work with the government gets the interest back, I mean, of that money, or?
I think we're earning the interest right now.
yeah,
I mean, it will be any interest, I have no idea.
Normally,
it's not much, though.
the federal government, I believe, asked for the interest back.
That's what I thought.
But in this instance, I believe that they came back and said, you're free to keep it. So I think for this particular.
Yes, yes.
I mean, it means I can retire sooner, you know?
Yep.
Hang on to it for a couple of years and then spend it all at once.
Too bad interest rates are so low.
Yeah.
Wait, wait.
We had departments put together lists of ideas for how we could allocate some of the funding for your, put it together for your consideration. And these are the categories that they were lumped into. So the infrastructure for the water and sewer, I think the greatest interest of other municipalities and ourselves is that's a definite thing that that you can spend the money on. And every year we have spending between like $6 and $8 million that we borrow. So that's a big thing for us, and I think for other municipalities. That's why 50. What did you say? 50%.
Yeah, around, I think it was like 51% of those on the call already had plans of using it on infrastructure.
So on that, does that include lead replacement, lateral replacement?
It could, but there's also going to be probably a water bill coming in the next couple of years, hopefully.
Yeah.
That would be specific. You could specifically use
Address that.
for that.
For what it's worth, Biden wants to get rid of lead laterals altogether across the country. So I could see quite a push, and I don't know anyone that's against it. I think that's a bipartisan issue. So I would expect there to be more funding to completely take care of that.
Okay, and then since I'm asking questions, something kind of unrelated. We've seen at the state level that there needs to be a maintenance of effort in order to secure federal funding, that the state potentially is losing out on federal funding. Is there anything tied in with this at all, a maintenance of effort?
No.
Unprecedented.
It really is.
Maybe you could explain, one of you, the revenue replacement. What is refer on it? Revenue
Sure.
replacement.
I was just going to go through the
Okay.
categories, but if I don't
Right.
answer the question, or maybe Jason can help
Okay,
you with that. So the second is technology and fiber. Broadband is a big thing with COVID. Saw the deficiencies in some people that didn't have access to broadband and their inability to work from home or have education. So that's a big focus of these funds, and we do have a lot of opportunities in the city to further our areas of fiber and help. We have a lot in the parks and things, and we have Wi-Fi in the parks and all of our buildings, but there's some areas that we need to fill in. So that's another area of opportunity. Economic development. There's a variety of options, piggybacking on what all the SBA has in the state and things like that. There's opportunities for that. I think due to the large amount of funding for those, you'd probably, you have to look at if that's really benefiting the larger citizenship or just smaller group of people, because there is options out there for the people that need that right now. Revenue replacement, that is basically, so our tourism money from the motel room tax, we lost out on that. We had lost revenue from fees and permits and things like that. We didn't give late fees for taxes, right, so there's lost revenue of that. So those are the kind of revenue replacements.
So what that program does is there's a formula that's in place that says, calculate your lost revenue in this particular way, and to the extent that you have lost revenue, you don't have completely unrestricted money, but it's more unrestricted than the rest of it. So, we can spend money on water sewer infrastructure that's stated directly in ARPA, but if you have, to the extent that you have losses for revenue replacement, you can spend it on other things that relate to generally operating a municipality.
So let's say the overnight parking fees were waived, we could call that lost revenue, and that could go to the PD.
That goes to general fund.
That goes to the general fund typically, but it could go, so going to the general fund is,
It could be spent on general operations. And technically, for reference, the formula does not look at one particular revenue. You can't just say, tourism revenue is down, so we can claim that. It looks at the entirety of the city with exceptions and says, as a whole, are you up or down, kind of thing. So it's to be calculated yet. And that will be calculated annually for 4 years. It's a 4-year program.
There's been some guidance not to put things in the general fund too, because our expenditure restraint still exists. So you have to be careful with that, levy limits and expenditure restraints. You don't want to commingle.
The money that we get and we put in the bank and it gains interest, are we required to spend that as well by the 2024, or can we not have to spend that by 2024?
I thought that was ours to keep.
Right, I know you said that, and I'm wondering if we are not limited to spend it.
Sorry.
Like on
That hasn't been asked, I don't think, has it?
I thought it was unrestricted,
Yeah.
ours to keep kind of money, but that probably needs to be addressed yet.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a good
Thanks.
question.
They keep coming out with updates to the FAQs and just further guidance as we go along.
Gotcha.
So then people had ideas for staff development and training. Some of those things would be like with the library to teach people how to work with people for workforce development or different technology resources. And then the compensation for the premium pay. There is a restriction that it has to be frontline workers, so people that were working from home would not be eligible for that, if that was something that was decided. Community services, there's a lot of health initiatives that were recommended, and then just the COVID response, our PPE and that kind of thing can use it for. So just a little bit about, as we're trying to make recommendations for you to consider how to spend it. There's some best practices for finance, and I'm sure Jason can add a lot here, but you shouldn't use these one-time only things on operating expenses, because as you know, it's not sustainable. So then you're just creating a bigger deficit than we already have. So you should really focus on the projects that have long-term returns for your citizens' rate and taxpayers. So I think that's why a lot of people are focused on the capital projects, and why I want to speak for Jason, but I think the two of us believe that infrastructure is probably the best approach for this, because it would change it from us borrowing every year into paying for on a cash basis, and then people don't have to pay the interest on the debt. So it's more of a longer term thing, and it affects the greater, city and residents and taxpayers.
Right, so when you think about that, you can spend your money on something operating, that's just that one thing, and that's done. But if we can take this one-time money and add additional benefits on top of that, then we're impacting the taxpayers to even a greater extent. Just avoiding that interest, that's a great win for the city.
And also you can, if you're not borrowing for those things, you can, we do have a lot of other challenges with maintenance in our facilities. You can utilize that extra amount to borrow for that, because we know that we can borrow for water and sewer. We don't know for sure that we can borrow for all these other things. So it helps reduce the impact on the taxpayers on a longer term basis. So going into that, one of the things that we're looking at recommending and asking you your feedback on this year we would be borrowing $6 million for our water and sewer projects, and Jason, you're putting that borrowing together right now.
I'm starting to put that together, yeah.
So it would be helpful to know if the council would consider.
I move approval. Yeah.
Discussion.
Yes.
Yeah, so this would be the 2021 borrowing. So then there'd be opportunities for 22, 23, and 24. But given it's $6 million, and we have 31, it does take a significant portion of that up, but it also is a big impact in far as our debt and things like that. So,
And it has a positive impact on just about every single taxpayer in the city.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Tax increase.
But you did say there's a possible or likely bill coming for the lead replacement.
right.
So when would we know that? And that might take up some of that $6 million in future years then, right? Or might relieve us of some of that $6 million in future years? Not really, because this
We're
doesn't
not
include.
borrowing for that.
We're not borrowing for that.
Yeah,
It's
right,
just
right
one
It's a
now.
separate, this
Yeah,
is just our normal
I think-
work. There's no lead
Okay.
in, we're not doing any lead laterals in any of this.
No lead in the mains.
Right, I understand that. Yeah, okay, but that $6 million has nothing to do with lead.
did have, I think I should have put this one up next, but there's possible additional funding. We talked about the water bill, but then there's also an infrastructure bill. So if that would come through, there would be another opportunity to use that on capital expenses like the streets. So then we wouldn't necessarily have to borrow for those. So if we can the more we can turn into cash basis, the better off it is for years for the taxpayers. So
Do you think this is setting us up to actually go to a cash basis in the future? Are we, I mean,
I don't.
no.
It would be.
This is
Not
not gonna,
completely.
there's not enough lasting us long enough to switch over from borrowing.
I thought about it. It's interesting. We
thought
thought
about
about
it
it
in
for
the
like
past.
just if you look at just the sewer utility, you know, we're consistent in our borrowing, but we would likely need around $30 million just to get out of the borrowing, the annual borrowing.
Just for
There's just
sewer.
too much money needed to stop. It'd be great.
Yeah. Especially with the coming inflation.
Yeah.
That's good for us for borrowing purposes. We don't have to pay back less
Yeah, well,
in inflated dollars. All right.
$100 anymore.
just a little bit about the next steps. We're just waiting for the guidance, so we would continue to gather more information on different opportunities and expenses, and then some other opportunities. I believe the county wants to get together with us and talk about some leveraging our funding to have mutually beneficial, sustainable projects. I think also we're trying to work with the City of Milwaukee, the Water Works, to work to eliminate or alleviate some of the challenges we have with the reservoir with our Waukesha Water Project. If we're able to kind of go in on that project, then it reduces the need for the reservoir and then that maintenance too. So that would be a really good long-term thing also. And then just put together recommendations for you.
I think we already asked them as we went along here.
Do you feel that this is unprecedented?
Yes.
I just wanted to bring up a comment, and Tom and Vince and Rosalie might correct me if I'm wrong, but I like the idea of using this. I'm not going to call it a windfall because it's certainly not that, but it's not found money, but it's
Unprecedented. Yes.
And just as when the city won that lawsuit against the electric company with the cyanide and the wood chips, we used it to the benefit of everybody in the city with the new fire stations.
Right.
Right.
You know, so the idea that we do something similar here is, I'll say brick and mortar-ish with it, you know, that has a lasting citywide impact. I really like that. I think it's a great idea.
years ago, we also got a public works grant from the feds, directly from the feds, so this isn't totally unprecedented. That built our health department. That was done totally with a federal grant that we received, and it was part of the big public works bill back at that time.
So is infrastructure updates to DPW or?
It's the water and sewer. If we don't know what the infrastructure bill will look like, but this infrastructure is limited to water and sewer and
know.
broadband.
I know the last time when this came up, it was the only cities that were eligible were those that had a shovel-ready
Shovel-ready,
program to
yeah.
go.
All right.
Because they wanted to make an immediate impact and get people back to work in good-paying jobs.
Stimulus.
And we had a design for a health department.
Have those in the file box.
We were able to
Yeah.
get, and our congressman at that time got the grant for us.
Yeah. I'm
So
sure we
start
can have
engineering
plans.
things over
Right,
there.
exactly.
I'm sure we can have plans ready right away.
Is it possible for the money to be used in-house? And I'm thinking a sound system for the council chambers.
Well,
I think
it could be-
offsetting some of the money.
Well, I'm thinking it's helping citizens that come to the meetings that,
Yeah.
Right.
you know,
Technology item.
Or if we go back to Zoom at any point.
and that was going to be another question. Can any of this be used for technology, for helping our citizens access, say, tavern licenses and liquor licenses online.
That is one of the things that's on the list for technology, yes.
Can that be used for that?
Well, to the extent that we have revenue loss, you could use it on
For
that.
that.
Well, wouldn't the loss of the parking considered revenue loss?
Yeah.
When
We do
waive
have-
the
yeah.
overnight fees?
I have a question. As far as infrastructure, water, sewer, would that include rat abatement? Since we haven't had rat abatement for so many years, that falls under health.
That is a health item.
Yeah, it is.
And it seems to be a growing problem within the city.
That's interesting. I don't know how,
I'm not sure on
We-
that one.
Okay.
You want to hire a
Well, I mean,
contractor?
two parts with that
Well,
economic
wait, they
impact
didn't
to
finish my
residents.
question.
Pardon?
She didn't finish answering mine.
You had a question?
Would it count as the loss to update that infrastructure because we waived the fees? Like, if we chose to do it, does that consider loss of revenue since it was our
Our
choice
decision.
Our
to
decision.
do
Oh,
it?
yeah, that-
yeah.
I didn't see any guidance that suggested that that particular choice would be an issue, but it's not a final rule yet.
That's a good question.
We're pretty certain on the water sewer issue.
Do you think it's good?
That was plain as day. That was an earmark. They wanted to address water sewer storm.
So we go gangbusters on that for now.
I think that's a good idea.
So back to the rats. Where would we be on that?
We'll have to figure, I don't know how we would,
The,
the revenue, we could maybe do it with, I
we
don't
could
know.
potentially do it with whatever calculation of revenue loss comes up to be. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You can see what our pet projects are from all of us, what the important things are to our constituents. Yeah.
Can any of this money be used for assisting senior services?
Or increasing them.
Because
There,
we didn't have any for
Right.
yeah.
last year.
There are specific federal programs for senior services that they have money allocated, but as far as doing it locally, I would think,
I guess it would partly depend on what the expenditure is, because if it's an operating expense, we would probably not want to go that route.
Oh, I agree with that. I'm just thinking, do we need anything to assist the seniors that we're lacking right now? As far as, I know we're lacking infrastructure there.
yeah.
Can it be used, can any of it be used in that basis?
Are you talking like transportation help and stuff like that?
Well,
Or people appointments, things like that?
That could be too, Tracy. That's, that's a good thought.
If I may add to that, when we were in our meeting, technology was a big shortcoming for the senior center. If you want to fall under the category of health, depression, and loneliness, and all the other things, the programming could be looked at, additional new programming, and not at all to do with operating costs. Just a better support, maybe even looking at programming for that 55 up, rather
And-
than just like the food programs that the federal government, subsidizes.
And maybe a more outreach to people that are stuck in their homes that can't get to the senior center or aren't as fortunate to be able to get there.
I'd like to see a lot more technology used to bring that up to where the seniors actually can use it. They just don't have the assistance to do it right now.
All those things we can look into.
Yeah.
I think people are going to the things that we know for sure, but there's a lot of probably some other opportunities that we can work through when we get the final rule.
So it's 15.5 May 2021, 15.5 May 2022, using it by December 2024. So the 15.5 is almost like the guinea pig of where we use it to ensure that we're doing it properly, that we get the second payout, correct?
Well, I don't know when audit is going to kick in. I don't know what they have as far as manpower to start those audits. The ARPA ruling, the ARPA Act was designed specifically to say, unless you were having major financial difficulties, there was some exception, it's just going to be 50% and 50%. I read one of the ideas with that was just to see, maybe a year out from COVID, how are things changing? Maybe let's not spend all the money right away, and let's just see how things improve over the year before we start spending the back half. So they baked in that delay just for that.
Isn't a bad theory.
Likely, they're not going to, unless you're blatant, you're going to get the second
Oh, okay.
portion, and then you'll have to give it all back
If that.
whenever they get to it.
Any of these, if you start any new types of programs to address some of the needs like Tracy's talking about, or I'm talking, or anybody else, I think one thing to keep in mind is that we don't want to hire permanent employees to do this. We've done these types of programs in the past, and we've hired temporary help, contract people. Tell them you're going to be here for a year or 2 years. When the program ends, the funding ends, your job is done.
Right.
Or we hire an outside firm to do something like that. But I don't think we should shy away from programs to help citizens just because it's going to cost us in labor, because we're not going to hire full-time permanent employees.
We, in the past, really, some of those needing programs already that I believe have been in place within our city or many other community through the block grant program, which the city is getting over last year over $1.5 million, So, and of course it gets allocated in various areas, but already those programs are in place. So if it needs more funding, so maybe the money could be, some of it could be put towards the block grant programs, I think that's only works more effective, I believe, I mean, because those programs are there, but we have some agency in the last few years, some they just stopped asking for money, I mean, they just didn't come forward. They just shut down and not do anything. But the programs, the block grant committee already have had those programs in place to help a lot of citizens, a lot of seniors. You're already there, but just sometimes it needs additional funding, That's it.
All right, might be worth Patrick going back through to see if they're short in one area or another that could potentially benefit from it.
You could turn that Burger King into a playground.
Hey, there's already
Just
talk-
saying.
No, they're hiring.
It's going to be a Steak and Shake. There's already talking.
No, they have a,
Oh, yeah, right,
they have a
sorry.
Facebook page up there hiring.
Seen that.
For anyone watching, that's a rumor. It's not true.
The Facebook page is up
Really?
for Burger King on 106 in Greenfield. They say they're going to reopen and hire.
The German talk.
Not on this.
Fake news.
Hey, everything on Facebook is true now. Come on.
Yeah.
Anything else down there?
Steak and Shake, and then what else did I hear? Barbecue
Anyone
place.
have
Leave
any
it
other
to me to throw it all
questions or
off the rails.
comments
Sorry, people.
Yeah.
on any of this?
That's germane to the
Yes.
topic.
Sorry.
Not?
I move we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.